Hello, this is Energy and Environment Weekly, our top stories for today. NNPCL Limited assures Nigerians on the delivery of OBIAFU, OBRIKOM, OBEN gas pipeline in Rivers State. NMDPRA enlightens stakeholders on their roles and duties according to the PIA. And on power, electricity units are set to jump by 30 to 40% in the coming week. Customers are advised to buy as many units as they can before July the 1st. And on environment sector, Trademore Estate submerged in flooded waters as FCT receives over 8 hours of rain. And discussions bordering on desertification and drought ongoing as Nigeria continues commemoration of World Desertification and Drought Day. We have this and more on Energy and Environment Weekly for today. I am Joycelyn Adah, and we begin with a weekly report on oil prices. Over the week, oil prices have been fluctuating, up $1 today and down a cent the next. Thursday of last week, price dipped slightly with trader expectations of further interest rate hikes countered by potentially bullish U.S. oil inventory data after preliminary figures showed a fall in stocks. Brent futures eased by 47 cents, and that's 0.6% to $76.65 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude futures were down 44 cents, and that's 0.6% at $72.09 a barrel. The benchmarks had firmed in the previous session as U.S. corn and soybean prices raised to multi-month highs, raising expectations that crop shortfalls could lower biofuels blending and increase oil demand. The Bank of England is expected to raise rates for a 13th time at a one in the face of stubbornly strong inflation. Higher interest rates could slow economic growth and reduce oil demand. This morning, oil prices held on previous sessions' gains as the market kept a lookout for fresh drivers, such as official U.S. oil inventory data and Chinese factory activity data due next week. Global shares fell while gold rose after an aborted uprising by Russian mercenaries raised questions about the authority of President Vladimir Putin, leaving investors little option but to focus on the broader macroeconomic picture. Gold, often perceived as a safe haven in times of geopolitical or market turmoil, rose 0.6% to $1,000,932 an ounce. Brent crude futures eased 0.3% this morning to $73.69 a barrel, having earlier fetched as much as $74.80 a barrel. That the ruble dropped to a 15-month low early in Moscow. Gold, which had hit a 3-month low on Friday, rose 0.2% to $1,925 an ounce. U.S. Treasuries were firm with yields, which fall when prices rise marginally lower. 2-year yields fell 4 basis points to $4.71%. 10-year yields fell BPS to 3.69%. And now away from oil prices to more national matters. Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, has expressed confidence in the delivery of the OBIAFU, OBRIKOM, OBEN gas pipeline project in Rivers State known as the OB3. The Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari, gave the assurance during a visit to the project site.
This is 36 meter line. So for this section where the fault went very deep, we drilled up to 50 meters. So we grouted like 30 meters up. But we plan to, from the sandfield area, we're looking at grouting just 10 meters zone because it's not as bad as this section.
Yes, sir, but it's very close to clay, a clay cap. And the pressure at this point is not likely to be as high as the pressure you have at that region because this clay cap.
The OBIAFU OBRIKOM OBEN gas pipeline project in Rivers State is being built by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. The OB3 is designed to connect gas pipelines from Nigeria's eastern region to the western part of the country. On an inspection tour of the project site, Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, MALLAM Mele Kyari, explained that when the project is completed, it will usher in Nigeria's gas revolution.
We know that gas has reached this location. Once we cross the river Niger, the gas revolution in the domestic market of Nigeria would have been delivered. This is a critical project. We did have some technical issues, but I'm now confident that the team can deliver on this.
The 48-inch, 127-kilometer OBIAFU OBRIKOM OBEN gas pipeline is an ongoing construction of natural gas pipeline. It will run from the OBIAFU OBRIKOM gas plant in Rivers State to OBEN Node in Edo State, Nigeria. Several challenges had delayed the completion of the project, ranging from rain and flooding to difficulty building pipelines under a riverbed and then subsequent impacts of COVID-19. The NNPCL Limited has assured Nigerians completion of the project. And still on the NNPCL, the United States of America is seeking to collaborate with Nigeria and other African countries in terms of cleaner energy to foster safer and cleaner energy for the world. U.S. Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Energy Resources, Ambassador Geoffrey PYATT, relayed the message of President Joe Biden to the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, MALLAM Mele Kyari, during a working visit to the country. U.S. Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Energy Resources, Ambassador Geoffrey PYATT and his team paid a visit to the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, MALLAM Mele Kyari, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Ambassador Gabriel Adah, and top management of the company. Ambassador PYATT said the economic reforms undertaken by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have garnered positive reactions from the United States of America. He said the world is facing active disruptions, one being the transition itself, the other is the rapid shift towards sustainable source of power and the emergence of technologies to reduce carbon intensity of the fossil fuel being used.
I had the opportunity last December to sit down with CEO Kyari on the margins of the Africa Leaders Summit. That was an event that reflected President Biden's direction to all of us to lean into our partnerships with Africa and to identify opportunities to further grow the cooperation between American companies and the American governments and our counterparts here. Nigeria is at the heart of that effort because of your size, because of the leadership that your country exercises across the continent, and because, in terms of this ministry, because of the globally significant asset that Nigeria possesses. This is a moment of profound transportation in the global energy system. There are two huge disruptions that are acting at the same time. One is the energy transition itself, the rapid shift to more sustainable sources of power, and the emergence of technologies that allow us to reduce the carbon intensity of the fossil fuels that we use, whether that's carbon sequestration, much stronger work against methane flaring and venting, and also the development of new technologies like green hydrogen that offer the prospect of addressing hard-to-abate sectors in a way that does not have the same damaging climate impact. The other factor, of course, is Russia and the implications for the global market from having a country that until last year was the world's largest oil and gas producer, having marginalized itself through its actions in Ukraine and the sanctions that have followed. So we see tremendous opportunity here. I'm very proud of the work that my bureau, the Bureau of Energy Resources, has done jointly with NNPC, specifically in the area of carbon management.
The Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Mele Kyari, said Nigeria is committed to its plan for net zero carbon emission in the country by the year 2060. He said Nigeria is shifting a lot of attention towards gas development and production as it was cleaner fuel than oil.
For progressing many interventions the United States is doing in our country and particularly in our industry towards supporting our efforts to reduce our emissions by creating the right framework of both knowledge and even material support to do this. We're particularly pleased and to appreciate again the support the United States gave us while our country was making progress to bring the Petroleum Industry Act into place. And I'm also aware that several supports are coming our way to increase our capacity to produce clean energy in our country as we progress our efforts towards enhancing gas development and gas penetration in our country, which is, in our case today, is much cleaner fuel in our environment. And we're most grateful for all the support that we know we anticipate and the ones that we're getting. And also, going forward, this country being a very populous country, 70% of our population below 30, and enormous undersupply of energy, it's a perfect time for the United States to help us and support us, either by accessing technology, financing, as we continuously make efforts towards decarbonization of our operations. As is very obvious today that our flare sites are going down, new flares don't come up, and also we're doing everything possible to reduce reliance on biomass as a source of energy. And the combination of all this will be a clear indication from our country that we are moving towards net zero by 2060. That was the commitment of our country, but more than anything, we think we'll see an early exit from many of the challenges that we're seeing today. And
the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Ambassador Gabriel Adah, described the U.S. as a strong partner of Nigeria in its quest to move towards a greener energy with its energy transition agenda. He said Nigeria is ready to collaborate with international community to ensure a safer world and cleaner energy for the globe.
The transition, and for Nigeria now, gas is our transition fuel. And we want to see every form of collaboration, assistance that will help us maximize the use of gas, which we all have agreed is a cleaner form of energy in our transition agenda. And we are doing that with every sense of responsibility. I do not need to go over all the steps that have already been taken to ensure Nigeria is meeting its commitments to decarbonization, to demethanization, to carbon capture and all that. But more so, going forward, we will want to work with your team to see how we can very quickly push the domestication of usage of gas, as an alternate fuel. And then not only in our houses, in our automobiles, but also in our decade of gas agenda, we hope that the working group that will be set up between Nigeria and the United States will pay very close attention. The government of Nigeria has gone ahead to put in place incentives that will help and then push investors into this area so that we can very quickly cover the gaps that are out there. And then, of course, the new Electricity Act that has just been put in place also has further expounded this opportunity by opening up the opportunity for capture energies here and there, which we feel will further provide the much needed energy, even in silos, until we are able to very significantly reduce the energy poverty that we have been faced with. So,
for us, as part of our activities, we are key into that is global direction in energy transition. As a matter of fact, in the operations in the Nigeria upstream, we are both in terms of our regulation and others, we are doing everything possible to ensure that the development of Nigeria hydrocarbon is done in a responsible and cleaner manner. And in doing this, we've enjoyed support, and I have to thank America and the embassy for the support we have enjoyed. We've been working with the Net Zero and the USDA and the United States Trade Department. They've been giving us necessary support. And as further effort in trying to ensure cleaner environment, the Commission is embarking on the, as part of gas flare-out activities. We are progressing in the Nigerian gas commercialization program. This is a major climate action commitment of Nigeria, towards decarbonizing the environment.
Ambassador Geoffrey PYATT said President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has made a very strong start in reforming the country. He pledged his country's support in creating the U.S.-Nigeria Strategic Energy Dialogue to bring together officials of the government of both countries on refining the energy pathway. The meeting was attended by the Chief Executive of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Engineer Gbenga Kumulafe, the Chief Executive, Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Engineer Farouk Ahmed, and other top management of the NNPCL Limited.
In a bid to enlighten stakeholders on the smooth implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, organized a General Counsel and Legal Advisors meeting with midstream and downstream operators. The Chief Executive Officer of the agency, Alhaji Farouk Ahmed, said the essence of the parley is to deliberate on the current legal framework for the Nigerian oil and gas sector as intended by the PIA 2021. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Alhaji Farouk Ahmed, represented by the Executive Director, Distribution System, Storage and Retailing Infrastructure, Ogbugu Ukoha, said the PIA is intentionally designed, amongst other key objectives, to create two distinct complementary regulatory entities to promote gas utilization through deepening of midstream operations, unbundle the composite licensing regimes to encourage more participation across the upstream, midstream and downstream value chain, attract local and foreign investment, and sustainably grow the industry for host communities and Nigerians.
The essence of this engagement is to deliberate on the current legal framework for the Nigerian oil and gas industry as intended by the PIA 2021. Present clarity and insights to the sections of the law with diverse or different interpretations. Example, Section 7EE and 8D. Discuss value chain propositions in a deregulated market and propose a way forward for a seamless operationalization of the objectives of the PIA. We are aware that stakeholders and potential investors require regulatory clarity to drive investment decisions and guide operations to ensure compliance with legal provisions and prevent reputational damage. Regulatory clarity is also beneficial to the regulators as it will allow both entities to focus on their mandates as intended by the law for the benefits of the industry and Nigerians. You may have observed from the program of events that we have prepared presentations on this subject, but please permit me to provide a bit of insight that will guide our deliberations today. The PIA was designed to restructure the industry by creating a demarcation between the upstream, midstream, and downstream value chain for growth and efficiency. To fully achieve this key objective, it also created two regulatory bodies from the SY regulators with clear, distinct functions and mandates. The NUPRC is mandated to fully regulate all upstream operations as defined in Section 318 in the PIA, conduct measurements of crude oil and natural gas produced for the purpose of royalty determination, and ensure an arm's length transfer to midstream operations at measurement points, while the NMDPRA, on the other hand, is saddled with regulating the midstream and downstream operations, whether or not related to a lease.
The CEO of NMDPRA explained that beyond restructuring of the regulations by the agencies in the PIA, the law also requires the restructuring of companies and operations in the oil and gas industry. In his opening remarks by the authority secretary and legal advisor, Dr. Joseph Tolorunse said the GCLA forum is a continuation of the authority's drive to continuously engage with various industry stakeholders. He said the forum presents a unique opportunity for deepening the industry's general counsel and legal advisors' understanding of the midstream, downstream petroleum sector, the regulatory framework, and enable business and investment opportunities that can be derived from the Petroleum Industry Act 2021.
The purpose of this forum is to discuss issues pertaining to deepening industry legal practitioners' understanding of the authority's powers, functions, and regulations, providing clarity on perceived regulatory overlaps between the authority and government, between the authority and the commission, promoting the business enabling and investment opportunities derived from the licenses, permits, and authorization issued by the authority.
The Chief Executive Officer of the NMDPRA, Alhaji Farouk Ahmed, said the implementation of the PIA has necessitated major policy shifts which may have significantly impacted business models. He said it may take a while to fully adjust and change the modus operandi of the sector, but that to fully meet the objectives of the PIA, complete commitment is required from stakeholders.
The Organized Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Trade Union Congress, TUC, and the federal government have ended their continuous negotiations, which resumed with a resolution to conclude in 8 weeks before implementation. The meeting adjourned with an agreement to put in place the framework of specific demands made by the trade union and the NLC on potential deliverables that will benefit Nigerians. Speaking with journalists after the meeting, President of TUC and NLC, Comrade Festus Osifo and Joe Ajeru, said after going through the framework submitted by the federal government, the union will work out modalities of implementation through an instituted presidential steering committee and subcommittees.
There are some technicalities that are required beyond this meeting. So those technicalities will now move into the technical committee. So those technical committee will subsume into the presidential committee. But all these, we must conclude everything maximum in 8 weeks. So those technical committee, some will submit their report in 1 week. Once they submit in 1 week, we implement. Some will submit in 2 weeks, we implement. But the last should not exceed 8 weeks.
As at the end of this meeting, we have set up committees in those key areas to commence work on them to make sure that we wrap up in the next 8 weeks.
Speaking on the issue of minimum wage increase, they said the terms of reference which were not agreed upon would be looked at within 2 days in line with statutory laws. Also speaking, the Special Advisor, Special Duties, Communication and Strategy to the President, Dele Aleke, said all the parties will continue to interface through the established committee before a final resolution.
Other meetings will still be held in order to cross the T's and dot the I's, and we have adjourned again and we are meeting. Now, work groups have been constituted at today's meeting. There's a steering committee that will be like a clearing house, and there are other work groups set up comprising both parties, government and labor members. And these work groups will work together very, very harmoniously and very efficiently to arrive at the final resolution of all those demands.
You will recall that the Organized Labour and Federal Government had met 2 weeks ago in an emergency meeting to avert an impending industrial action following the removal of fuel subsidy supply and agreed to reconvene on the 19th of June. And now moving on the 1st of July, an upward review of electricity tariff will take effect. The Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, Eco Electricity Distribution Company, and Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company say the significant increase of 30 to 40% on electricity tariff is influenced by the fluctuating exchange rate. According to the DISCOs, under the MITO 2022 guidelines, the previously set exchange rate of $441 naira to a dollar may now be revised to approximately 750 naira to a dollar, which will have an impact on the tariffs associated with customers' electricity consumption. The power distribution companies say customers within band B and C with supply hours ranging from 12 to 16 hours per day will now have new base tariff of 100 naira per kilowatt, while bands A with 20 hours and above and band B 16 to 20 hours will experience comparatively higher tariffs. For customers with a prepaid meter, the DISCOs encourage them to consider purchasing bulk energy units before the end of the month, as this will allow them to take advantage of the current rates and potentially make savings before the new tariffs come into effect on the 1st of July. And for those on postpaid, which are the estimated billings, a significant increment is imminent in their monthly billings starting from August. And still on the power sector, electricity distribution companies known as DISCOs operating under the Nigerian electricity supply industry generated $247.33 billion revenue in the first quarter of 2023. This is according to data from the National Bureau of Statistics. The Bureau revealed this in its Nigeria latest data on electricity report, which entails energy billed revenue generated and customers report by DISCOs. On a year-on-year basis, the Statistical Office said revenue generated in the reference period rose by 20.81% from 204.74 billion naira recorded in the first quarter of 2022. The report states that total records of customers in first quarter of 2023 stood at 11.27 million from 11.6 million in the fourth quarter of 2022, showing an increase of 1.89%. On a year-on-year basis, the NBS said customer numbers in first quarter of 2023 rose by 5.99% from 10.63 million reported in first quarter of 2022. Similarly, it said metered customers stood at 5.31 million in first quarter of 2023, indicating a growth of 3.61% from 5.13 million recorded in the preceding quarter. On a year-on-year basis, this grew by 10.89% from the figure reported in the first quarter of 2022, which was 4.79 million. In addition, the Bureau said estimated customers during the quarter were 5.96 million in the first quarter of 2023, higher by 0.40% from 5.93 million in the fourth quarter of 2022. On a year-on-year basis, estimated customers increased by 1.99% in the first quarter of 2023 from 5.84 million in the first quarter of 2022. Electricity supply was 5,859 watts in the first quarter of 2023 from 5.611 in the previous quarter. However, on a year-on-year basis, electricity supply declined by 1.74% compared to the reported in the first quarter of 2022. We'll take a break now, and when we return, our big story for today: Trademore Estate submerged in flood as FCT receives over 8 hours of rain. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is Energy and Environment Weekly, and we are on the environment sector. The rain started in the early hours of Friday, the 23rd of June in the FCT. The rainfall picked up momentum and lasted for 8 hours, leading to the flooding of some areas in the FCT. The worst hit was the Trademore Estate located at Lugbe axis of Abuja. The FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, reported that no life was lost. However, 116 houses were submerged during the heavy floods. FEMA noted that the floods at Trademore Estate were caused by infractions on the water channel and appealed to residents whose houses are built on the water channel to relocate. According to the agency, Trademore is on the water channel and therefore vulnerable to floods. ASO Television paid a visit to the site of the floods as residents of the estate narrate their ordeal and losses to the flood. One of the residents of Trademore Estate, Alhaji Ashiru, while narrating his experience, claimed a life was lost to the flood.
Really, I can't tell you what happened. I did my way flow enter inside my BQ. See, that day for that BQ. I did there with my brother. I said, "Can me help me? Make a part that load." I see the weather change again. Yesterday, they working place. I call him. He didn't pick my call. I tell him, I say, "Car." I can't call my senior brother picking. I say, "In the working place, they work the same place, security." I call him. I say, "Car." I call. I say, "I call your uncle number. You know, he's not going." But he come back for night duty. He's supposed to watch that rain. Before they call my senior brother picking, he tell me, "Uncle, people already dead in that Trademore." I say, "What? Wait 10 come." I say, "Now the Ghana why they call up?" I say, "Wait 10. He said 10. He no. He don't close this morning. Whether in their house, I don't know. A mother can't call me from Niger. He asked me, say, "Wait 10 come." I say, "Maybe he's sleeping," and they call number is switch off. Actually, he's sleeping inside room. When he want to wake up, open the door, you see the bed. The inside room is cool. Before he can see water don't enter, see the place where I live in. Before he know, they open the door, water reach here. Now he can knock my neighbor. He say, "Mona commando, see flow." He must leave there. Say, "Kai, what they disturb me? Who they know the burglary like this?" If they open the water, enter. When water enter, I dey working place. I rush. I dey call number. I call my brother, my senior brother picking. I say, "Solo, what is happening?" He say, "Uncle, me I dey try your number. Your number is busy." I say, "I dey call. I no get them. Busy. My number is busy." Before I leave working place in Shalom, and now I'm doing my beat. I dey rush. I carry machine. I say, "Bike, what happened in Trademore?" He say, "Trademore, everything. People, water carry some people. I say, "What?"
Another resident of the estate, Mr. Musa Abdulkadir, appealed to the government and relevant agencies to come to their rescue while ensuring that structures are not built on waterways.
It was yesterday around 12, there about 12:30. The rain started, although the rain started in the morning around 8:30. Then by 12 o'clock, the flooding started gathering momentum. Before you know, the entire estate is flooded. They even carry away some vehicles, and some dead body was discovered this morning. It was a terrible something that happened yesterday. This gate was blocked for more than 3 hours, no exit, no entrance. Listen, people came out, rescued some. There are some Hausa boy that came rescue some people in this, some of those buildings over there. Some people were inside their house. The flood came and overwhelmed them inside. So everybody came to assist what they can do. The NEMA was here, officials was here, and other parastatals are also here to help evacuate people from their building. Some vehicles, about 3 vehicles were dumped here. They were evacuated yesterday. Understand? So a lot of things happened yesterday that beyond our imagination. We are only praying God for it not to happen again, and appealing to federal government and other relevant agencies to come and assist to ensure that such will not happen again some other time.
That was quite an unfortunate incident. The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Alhaji Yusufu Ibrahim Idris, says gender-responsive actions are central to effective, efficient and sustainable land restoration projects and programs. He said securing land rights for women and vulnerable groups are critical for successful land restoration. The Permanent Secretary said this at a national dialogue organized by his ministry on this year's Desertification and Drought Day with the theme, Her Land, Her Right. The theme for this year's Desertification and Drought Day, Her Land, Her Right, is aimed at drawing attention to the critical role of gender equality and inclusiveness in tackling land management issues and achieving land degradation neutrality, sustainable livelihoods and welfare of vulnerable groups, especially women. The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Alhaji Yusufu Ibrahim Idris, represented by the Director, Desertification, Land Degradation and Drought Management, Mrs. Mabel Emmanuel Okorigu, said, land degradation is currently one of the world's most pressing environmental problems, and it is expected to worsen especially in Nigeria with increasing population unless remedial actions are taken. He said, land degradation affects everyone through food insecurity, higher food prices, climate change, environmental hazards, and the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services. The Permanent Secretary said investing in women's equal access to land and associated assets is a direct investment in global land restoration.
We cannot shy away from the fact that women have unequal and limited access over the control of land, and that women hold a vital stake in the health of the land. Yet, they often don't have control over land. In many parts of the world, women face significant barriers in securing land rights, limiting their ability to thrive and prosper. When land becomes degraded and water is scarce, women are often the worst affected. Investing in women's equal access to land and associated assets is a direct investment in their future and the future of humanity. It's time for women and girls to be at the forefront of global land restoration and drought resilient efforts. Nigeria, as country party to the UNCCD, is expected to consider and domesticate decisions of the Conference of the Parties, one of which is responsible land governance and tenure rights that are gender sensitive to enhance livelihoods and well-being of women and the vulnerable groups.
That celebrates, not only celebrates the World Day on desertification and land degradation, but also recognizes the role of women in land management and restoration and sustainable food production. So we are happy to be a partner with the federal government of Nigeria to really address the challenges of land degradation and desertification through a very large program that covers 20 states in Nigeria, the agroclimate resilience in semi-arid landscapes, ACRACEL, that I'm sure everybody knows the acronym by now, and this project, which is almost a year now under implementation, is really going to make the change as regards restoration of degraded lands, but through a very different approach, a multi-sector.
For the National Council on Climate Change, we operate under the guidelines of the Convention on Climate Change, which is the UNFCCC. And that convention has specific section that is focused on what? On gender. In fact, there is a specific negotiation platform that is devoted to just gender issues, gender mainstreaming. Number two, for countries like Nigeria, that are suffering the impact of climate change beyond what developed countries are doing. And coming from last week's COP, where a decision was made or reached on loss and damage, the idea is also focusing on the specific role that women must enjoy within the context of this loss and damage, because they are the ones that lose their homes, they are the ones that lose their farmlands, they are the ones that lose their sources of livelihood. So,
what role should gender play in the implementation? And the place of a woman is absolutely and strongly defined in the activities that are associated with what women could do as far as land restoration, land activities of farming, land investment, to the extent that the project itself has embedded in it different financial support systems, one called CRF, Credit Revolving Fund, another called RBF, all aim at empowering both genders, but most especially the women, because the project implementation manual understood that the woman and the girl are largely incapacitated and are at a disadvantaged position. So the project ACRISEL provided those avenues for the woman and girl to have access to till the land, to restore the land, to make money and livelihood out of the land. And here, those activities even went further to saying our results framework. In other words, the data will be servicing the investor, which is the World Bank, must indicate a clear percentage of about 40% for women participation and the girl.
Women own about 1% of agricultural land in Nigeria, and we also have a situation where 40 million hectares of arable land that Nigeria has is not currently being cultivated. So there is a double challenge of making sure that we cultivate that arable land, but then we also have an opportunity in the fact that there are lots of women in agriculture that we can stimulate to increase productivity by making sure they have access and ownership. Not just access, ownership is important of this land, and this is why this dialogue is important, so that we can set the agenda for the new administration in terms of all the reforms that they're trying to conduct. Culture is simply elite consensus that has calcified over time. There was a point in time where it was not okay in the minds of majority of elite for women to own land. Today, we know that we do ourselves a disservice by preventing women from having land, which is why events like this are important to change that elite consensus. And if we can change that elite consensus, over time it becomes more of the culture for women to have access to land.
This will metamorphose to high-class level of catalytic effects that are positive and proactive. The integrity of land, the level of extinction of animals, exotic animals. There's a state in this country where I come from that somebody who is controlling the state had to say he's going to build a road, and that road is a superhighway. He had to clear a forest from Obudu to Calabar. He cleared a large expanse of forest. And when you do that, you look at the concomitance effect and the latent consequences. And that is what we are trying to say. Even the elites are in trouble. Last time we talked about plastic pollution. But today we are looking into, desertification, land encroachment, and drought. Who is the cause? Just turn to somebody and say, be careful about the environment.
The Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Alhaji Ibrahim Yusufu Idris, said The national dialogue is organized in collaboration with major stakeholders to brainstorm on policies and enact laws that will address gender inequality in Africa. And that's it on Energy and Environment Weekly for this week. Join us again next week, Monday, for an update on the energy and environment sector. I am Joycelyn Elakeche Adah. Good afternoon.